Good evening. The news gang is here tonight. Betting on new taxes. Is Rotich on the money? A big hole to fill and a taxman that is way off mark. What now? And stealing that just won't stop. We break down the taxes, the holes and the possibilities. Plus, the take, the kicker, the punchline and the angle. Jamila's memo tonight is that there will be no memo. She's a little under the weather. We wish her a quick recovery, but we have a different Mohammed on the show, not Jamila this time. Mohammed Welie, who is a senior advisor, Saudi Arabia Monetary Authority. Karibu sana to the gang. Are you going to have a memo at the end of this?
No. But I will represent Jamila well. So.
All right, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Saying that this guy is representing Jamila. He's from King Ero. So King Ero and Banana and Ibad. So he should fit where he is.
Karibu na Mwimuto.
Karibu na Mwimuto.
Kabisa.
All right. So I don't think I want to start here for a moment. Francis, you spend quite a bit of time out there, and usually we have this thing, you know, when the budget is read, there are all these MPs who would usually come, you know, in those days, I say, "Hii budget ni ya mwananchi." How was it? What was the mood there? What were people really saying that we didn't get to hear on TV?
The excitement is over. If you compare what we used to cover back then and what was happening today or the last 2 years or so, you realize that the excitement that used to be there is no longer there.
The briefcase looks empty, you know,
looks empty. Even I saw some parliamentarians even leaving parliament because probably they didn't feel like they really needed to sit there and listen to the cabinet secretary. Previously, every member of parliament would look forward to the budget reading day. Today is a little different. But also you realize that still quite a number of our parliamentarians don't necessarily engage with the budget. Actually, it's like they don't quite a number of them, it's like they don't bother. You'll even see the level of interest tells you that probably it's not a very exciting discussion for quite a number of them. Unlike, let's say, when we had the hulabaloo about the finance bill, the taxation on fuel and so on and so forth. But the few who sit there and listen are those you would say are quite interested in the budget making process. But even then, what is even more exciting is when they come out of the session and you hear them comment some very off mark. Some of the things that they say, you wonder, at what point did the cabinet secretary say that?
Which is interesting, Yvonne, considering the explainer that you had this evening about how central the role of MPs is in this whole budget making process, and yet there seem to be a good number of them, at least, quite disengaged. I mean, credit to a few of them who really get
and the interesting thing is many of them, you know, throw the blame on Treasury, on the executive, that, you know, Rotich is over borrowing, this is what they're doing. And yet I mean, it's Treasury and Parliament that works hand in hand, and the powers that have been given to them by the new constitution, by the Public Finance Management Act, essentially say that Parliament are the ones that tell Treasury, this is what you can and cannot spend on, this should be your priority, not this, this is how much you should borrow. I mean, I even highlighted it in 2014 before we took Eurobond 1. It was Parliament that, in fact, increased the debt ceiling by 2 trillion, and that is, they are the ones who actually gave Rotich the permission.
By that you mean the amount,
that which he could, yes. Yeah. And so that is the most important thing that happens, and it happens before that budget statement is read today, such that, you know, whatever happens from here on. And I was speaking also to a number of other economists who say that every time they see that budget policy statement, which is the precursor to the budget statement that is produced today, that they pass it largely 99%. It's only like some few changes, and which is where the role of Parliament should be much, much stronger. I mean, our constitution is different, but I would like to see a situation like in the US where they had a government shutdown. Well, no one wants that, but what happened in the US,
I mean, where Parliament's role comes to bear on
the president and what he wants and some of the proposals.
And Linus, this used to be a big deal. I mean, way back, Parliament wasn't that involved. I mean, the ministers of your, whether it was Simeon Nyachai, Francis Masahalia, Musalia Mudavadi, Okemo, and all of these people, this thing was always that magical thing that no one really knew what was. It almost like a magician's hat where he would bring out a rabbit.
Right.
But now it is all out there way before, and yet the MPs look like they really are not part of this.
Very true. And the element of surprise that used to characterize the budget speech is all gone. That box no longer contains any surprises because they're out here way before the budget day itself, the formal budget day itself. And what this has done is it's increasingly putting into question the necessity of having the CS, Treasury, to go all the way to Parliament to sit and go through what is a mere formality. That budget is available to the House weeks, I think even months before the minister purportedly comes to present it. So the ceremony is something that will be questioned going forward, whether it's still necessary to go through the ritual or be honest enough and do what the Constitution foresaw, which is budget making is going to be a different process. It's no longer that ceremony that used to be with that box element of surprise, and ministers for Treasury actually used to play the part very well, behave like they have a big surprise. You know, there'll be sweets, there'll be chocolates coming out of this.
And in my village, sugar would disappear from all the kiosks in the local.
No need for all that
centers.
now. No need for all that now.
Because they would be hoarding.
Why?
Because at midnight, the price.
Yes. That element of surprise is gone.
Mohammed, I mean, you have obviously followed the issues around budget making for a long time, and the new constitution sought to make budget making more transparent, more participatory, and that sort of thing. In the spirit of the new constitution, what is your assessment of the role of Parliament this far? I mean, the constitution gives them a central role.
Yeah.
Where do you rate how they have done?
Well, I think, first of all, I would never want to, be on the side of MPs, but on this, them not being interested in the budget process today is because if you look at the way our budgeting is now done, a lot has changed. They would very much be interested in, we've done the budget policy statement, which is presented, I think, sometime in February. Yeah. So MPs are interested in expenditure side.
Yeah.
What today Rotich was doing is just to say or tell Kenyans how he's going to fund the budget. So I don't think they would ever be interested in the funding side, because even if it's 4 trillion, 3 trillion, as long as they have something in the budget, how it's funded, very few of them would be interested. In terms of the role
how Rotich funds his budget obviously would affect my pocket, for example, and so my MP would probably be interested in that, no?
Well, I think you're pushing it a bit.
You're expecting a bit more.
I'm expecting too much, huh?
I think the budgeting process has changed a lot, and the role of Parliament is actually, if they can use that, the Constitution gives them a lot, especially the National Assembly. They now approve, the budget, which they never used to do. And do they play an oversight role? In my view, I've written about this. I don't think they play a very good oversight role, because, in my view, the budget gets padded at formulation stage. And when it comes to when it's presented, members of Parliament are supposed to look at it, scrutinize the numbers, and make sure that everything is in order. But I think they add more, padding into the budget. You saw today, people even fighting Parliament. Why you've not added this for me and all that.
That's right.
Which was very unfortunate and very sad. But I think...
and I didn't know you can hold a member of Parliament responsible for that.
I know. It was...
right.
Was the wrong person punched?
Of course. I mean, it's... first of all, it's wrong to punch anybody, let alone a woman. Then you cannot punch someone for, duties that they do, even if what she did as a member of the budget committee.
Yeah.
But I think the role of Parliament in terms of oversighting is not good enough, in my view. We have a lot of bright people in Parliament, accountants, economists, but the way the budget, the way the committees are, constituted. It has nothing to do with someone's skills. If you look at the US, if you look at the budget committee of the US or any other country, you know, they would first look for guys who are qualified and who can do a good job in that area. But in our case, the process is different.
But those qualified people have to be elected first to the House. You can actually get 290.
I'm talking about within the House itself. The 349 MPs we have very good people who have, you know, financial backgrounds, who are strong enough to stand. I mean, I was expecting someone like Moses Kuria, for example, to be in the budget committee at minimum, or even to chair it. I mean, to chair it.
Yeah.
Because
what surprises me is that every time a new parliament is elected, one of the first struggles is which committee to belong to. It's the most lucrative stage, because there's some key committees where if you're a member, you reap benefits immediately. For example, if you're a member of the budget committee...
Okay, what do you mean benefits?
You, quote unquote, you're able to influence a few things, you know, some allocations to go to your constituency. Like the case in point here, the Fatma Gedi versus Rashid scenario, was allegedly over 100 million shillings that was allocated to counties or constituencies in counties where the budget committee went for public participation sessions. So now the argument being that you are a member of the committee and you did not allocate my constituency something. So it means if you're a member of the...
But does she actually have that power?
She doesn't necessarily have, although maybe a bit of influence,
maybe she has
a
influence
bit of
within the committee.
But I think we don't know the full story of that. But just by what we've read or seen in the papers, is that what she said is, I mean, the committee went to Wajir. They sat there. The story is that, you know, the member of parliament did not turn up to come and present a case for his constituency. And probably that's what led to, you know, the fight. But we don't know the full story, but that's what's being alleged.
I would like to
add, of course, there's the possibility, unfortunately, of the trivial county battles of the kind that we saw, Francis, during the Senate
governance
appearances, which was at play here, where this women rep from Wajir again is in sort of an altercation with the local member of parliament. There is unfortunately that sad angle of petty county rivalry.
Village politics brought to the city.
Right. And I wanted to just add something on the role of Parliament. So even just in terms of what happens before the budget statement, but more importantly also what happens thereafter. So providing oversight. So government is spending this amount on, you know, what it was supposed to be for. And I think that role is something that continues throughout the financial year, that Parliament really needs to step up in terms of reining in, you know, spending in the wrong areas. I mean, how long have we talked about Eurobond and where it went? And I know the Auditor General plays a role in that, but that is also a central role for Parliament in terms of oversighting these funds, even after, you know, nowadays, do we say we pass the budget statement, or, you know, we formulate it into law?
The truth be told, that I think we don't have the story of MPs really standing up to the executive, where they will say, okay, fine, this is what Rotich is proposing, but this is why we think it's a really bad idea. When you speak to the few MPs, for example, who are really seized of issues of the budget, for example, what are they saying about the role they are or are not playing with regards to how things end up where they are, where now we are complaining about things like that. For example, a case in point actually was when we had the VAT debate last year, and it is the MPs actually who had been, you know, kicking the can down the road,
year after
and then now they are all here, you know, protesting or whatever they were doing with the rest of us, as if this thing has just landed on them and they don't wait. What is that?
The confusion largely is on every so often we talk about separation of powers, the executive, parliament, and the judiciary. But every so often you hear our parliamentarians speak, us in government, and you keep wondering, okay, which part of government? And secondly, even if they were to say we are part of the larger government, or we are one arm of this government, does it necessarily mean that what the executive does must always pass, must always be right? Is it possible maybe for even a Jubilee parliamentarian to say this is not right, this is wrong? Because, for example, the Jubilee Party has a majority in all the House committees.
Except
all of them.
Except
the leadership of the PAC and the PIC. But in terms of the composition of the committees, they have the numbers. So you would expect if Jubilee parliamentarians were to actually play their oversight role, they would at one point stand up to the government and say, no, here, I think these allocations should go here and should go there. Because when you interview them, like today or previously, they will say very nice things about what the government should do or what the government has not done. But that is for sound bites. When they get to the floor of the House where the actual legislation takes place, where the actual oversight takes place, they don't.
You're nodding. And
yes, I'm nodding in agreement.
Parliament for many years.
Yes.
Watched it after that, yeah.
That's right. And the Constitution 2010 really tried to push for this principle of separation of powers. And I totally agree with Francis, because what you see in the House is a struggle to divorce with the past. It has not happened. You see the majority leader still sees himself as an agent of the executive. They work with the president. It doesn't work that way, because I think the drafters of the Constitution borrowed heavily from the United States arrangement. You get the majority leader of Congress, and you will feel the power. He's not a poodle of the White House, which is not the case here. Right now we are expecting very hard questions from Adan Duale. He should be a very key player when it comes to the drafting of the budget. He should have a major say. That is different sometimes even from the president. He can take a position that is different from the president's. The numbers are his. He controls the House. It's a bargaining thing. We're not seeing that. What we are seeing is the old kind of way where things run from top to down. This morning the cabinet met for what I would consider just a routine step to approve the budget. The same was passed to Parliament. Is Parliament, the Jubilee side, going to question it? It's not. Not just the Jubilee side. Now there is a handshake party that includes minority leader. They will all hold the same position.
Did you call it the handshake party of Kenya? Yes, Mohammed.
I think we also have a process problem. I mean, it's good you talked about the US from the political perspective. But then, even though we adopted that system, when it comes to budgeting, we've not done that. Now, for so many months, the budget committee discusses the budget, and all this wish list is discussed. Then you have a finance committee, which comes later after today. So the whole process, like what happened last year, could be held back because there is no coordination between the finance committee and the budget committee. I mean, if this committee was one, for example, and I think there were people who were proposing that they have one, then they sit, they know, what can be done and what cannot be done. So you have a budget committee here, which then, comes up with all these kinds of expenditure. It's approved by Parliament. And then you come to the finance bill. How are we going to raise the money? And then if there is a, if there's a problem there, then it means whatever was done throughout the year then becomes, a problem.
And no better way to demonstrate this confusion than what we saw today over the division of revenue bill. Look, Jubilee has a majority both in the National Assembly and in the Senate, and even in the mediation team, yet they couldn't agree.
Francis,
so clearly there's a problem somewhere.
Gladys Sholay, who's county MP for Uasin Gishu, says not all MPs do not follow the budget. I'm interested in the budget. I was able to influence certain allocations. Also, Parliament has a fully fledged budget department with many economists to advise MPs on the budget.
The Parliament budget office.
So where's the missing
but every
she's
time
part of the few.
Yes.
The missing link is the Parliamentary Budget Office.
Who listens to them?
First of all, they've raised a lot of good issues over time. Nobody listens to what they say. Number one. Number two, they have no access to information. And that has been a problem for them. I mean, if they go to Treasury, and I have a lot of friends who've worked in that office, they have a serious problem with access to information because Treasury is not willing to give them all the information they require.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, we have a parliamentary budget office, but do we listen to them? Do we utilize the analysis they do? I don't think we do.
As we take a break, they did actually talk quite seriously about the Housing Levy Fund. And they had alternatives, and they said the Housing Levy Fund would not be advisable. No one listened. Here we are today. Just thought I'd point that out.
I don't know if you're listening now. Well, let's take this break, and we'll be right back to discuss that issue of debt, corruption, and everything that will go into this budget. Don't go away. News Gang is right back.